Welcome to the Dynasty Dummies podcast. I am still not your host, Zack Reed, and I'm joined again by J. Mike, the real host, the man with the golden pipes, and the guy who tosses me softballs all show, so I can at least hit him for ground rule doubles. So how's it going this evening, J. Mike?
Pretty sure I'm going to add pitching coach to my resume. No, I am fantastic, man. I'm so happy to be here with you again. This is getting really nice. We've got a nice rhythm. I think we're having a lot of fun with what we're doing, and we're settling into a groove. And tonight, the long-awaited journey to wide receiver land. We get to talk about the top 6 from DLF. And before we jump into those wide receivers tonight, Zack, I feel like we started a good thing the last time we got together. We've got Zack's musings. I don't know if it's going to be weekly or bi-weekly or however often we get together. There's always something that you're chewing on. There's always something that's going on that's got you percolating. So I'm curious to hear, what is your current musing right now?
It's going to get dangerous if we keep delving into my mind here. That's not always a place you want to be. But this week I kind of borrowed. So I often will peruse Twitter and see if there are things that are interesting to me or things that kind of make me think. And it's no surprise that this week it was a tweet from Peter Howard. He's a friend of the show and one of the sharpest minds in fantasy football. And if you're not following him, he's at PA Howdy on Twitter, and you should be. If you're listening to us and you're not listening to Peter, then you're doing something wrong, because he gives the better half of any evaluation we do. He's where I turn a lot to the numbers. But his tweet was more about process and evaluation and the way things are happening right now in the Twitterverse. And his tweet was, "I'm constantly surprised by the number of evaluation processes that begin with a conclusion and that are followed up by an attempt to justify it." And that really struck a chord with me, because I think you're seeing that. And he was, I think, calling out his brethren, his film grinders, and his analytics nerds, not film grinders. I'll call the rest of us out. But I think that he was looking at analytics and seeing a lot of people adjusting for teams or adjusting for what they thought should have happened. And it's a trap that you fall into, whether you're looking at numbers or looking at tape, where you have an idea of what you're looking for before you start looking. And that's something that, for me, I really try, and we've talked about it before, I try not to bring bias into that process before I start. And it's inevitable you get a little bit, because you pick up things here and there, but I really don't want to know what Rondell Moore looks like before I start looking at his tape. I don't want to know what Jamar Chase looks like before I start looking at his tape. I don't want to know what Terrace Marshall looks like before I start looking at his tape, because I don't want that to color my opinion of these players. And it is an opinion. It is subjective. Like, you can't get around it watching film. But I think that Peter's point is, especially with the numbers are supposed to be objective. It's supposed to be numbers never lie. But if you start off with something and try to prove that happen, you end up overfitting. You end up, kind of manipulating your sample size. You have the adjusting score, like that sort of thing. And it's a real trap not to try to make these players be who you want them to be, and just let them be who they are.
And that is something that you said, and I'm glad that you brought this up. When it comes to specifically your process, Zack, with waiting and shutting everyone out until you actually have the opportunity to dive in and do the work yourself, I think that brings without trying to sound pious here, I think it brings a level of purity to your process, and I think clarity that people can recognize, hey, I'm not coming into this with preconceived notions about who a player is.
Well, and it ends up being a double-edged sword because you get people who think that I'm trying to be hot takey because, spoiler alert, I've got Rondell Moore as my wide receiver 1. And the general consensus is Jamar Chase is head and shoulders above. But I wasn't paying attention to consensus when I did my rankings. In fact, I was listening to nobody. I was watching, the 10 to 12 to 14 games on all of these players to get that feel for what I think of them. And look, I'm going to be occasionally different than other people, and I think that's okay. I think that the way I attack this sometimes is not from an NFL perspective. In fact, it's never from an NFL perspective. It's from a fantasy football perspective. And then by proxy, you end up doing a little bit of NFL evaluation. But some people are NFL evaluators. And anybody last year who was an NFL evaluator who had Henry Ruggs up high hit it because the NFL had Henry Ruggs up high. I mean, Henry Ruggs was a first-round pick. But for fantasy football, if you had him up, in your top 4 or 5 receivers, your process, to me, you're looking at the wrong things.
Incredibly well said. Incredibly well said. I've got a mini musing I want to slip in real quick, Zach, before we move forward. One of the things I wanted to go back and do, I wanted to go back and look at essentially kind of how we've worked over the last few years with our scouting. And spoiler alert, again, if you all are either new to the program or new to the Dynasty Dummies, one of the things that while I've played football my whole life in terms of being a youngster all the way through college, my film grinding per se has happened under the tutelage of Zack over the last few years. And one of the things that I want to continue to grow in as we walk through this is just to be more confident that when it comes to draft time, that I'm not running away scared of the work that I've done, and that I can dive into that and embrace that, recognizing that whatever may come, I'm comfortable with the work that I've done to this point and putting the pieces together. So, and the main thing I wanted to touch base on was last year, I had T. Higgins film grade higher than Denzel Mims. And I love Denzel Mims, the player, and we had the old sticky paws bit, and we have, we really embraced that, and I enjoy Denzel Mims. But when we got to draft season and T. Higgins goes at the top of the second round in the NFL draft, Denzel Mims, I believe, goes either in the mid to late portion of the second round of the Jets. And I still would push Mims ahead of Higgins, even though I felt very good about Higgins as the player, and I kind of had them in the same tier. And it really, and maybe this is looking back with 2020, maybe this is one of those things where, hey, I see it clearly now because it happened, but I don't want to run from the work that I did when I felt really good about T. Higgins and the player that he was, even though he was going into a sticky situation. Obviously, Denzel Mims went into a worse one. And I just want to be able to take this time, this work that we do, feel comfortable in it, and really be able to move forward and adjust as necessary without compromising the work that we do. So, yeah.
I really love that. And I think that's part of the value of doing your evaluation now, where it's quote unquote too early. Like we're way ahead of the process. This would be combine right now if this was a normal year, non-COVID year. And by getting our film grades locked in pretty early and understanding what this class is to us each individually, because your evaluations are not going to be the same as mine, even though we've worked together kind of evolving this process. And when you get to the combine and you get to the NFL draft, you have these numbers locked in from a time when it was just you. There was no noise. There were no other voices around. And so then when you get that draft capital in the first 3 rounds, man, stick to your guns like that. I don't think, and especially with receivers, don't adjust for team situation like you would with a running back, and even running backs. I mean, we saw last year where the community as a whole adjusted Clyde Edwards-Helaire a lot last year, and even like I know Kyle had him at running back 1 and was pushing real hard for me to move Jonathan Taylor down. And if I'd stuck to my guns, I still would have had Swift at 2, even though I think I ended up with Helaire at 2 and Swift at 3. Like, stick to your guns a little bit and don't get so caught up in landing spot, especially for a receiver, because of the longevity of the position and how quickly situations in the NFL change. I mean, look, Russell Wilson, they're talking about Russell Wilson leaving the Seahawks. You've already seen Carson Wentz ascend to an MVP caliber, fall to a backup, and now be shipped to Indianapolis. You don't know what the situation is going to be. So bet on the talent, bet on the draft capital.
And there you have it. So now, what many have come for at this point. Let's talk these top 6 wide receivers. And to set the stage a little bit, again, we'll talk about and shout out to all the good folks over at Dynasty League Football. We will be leveraging some screenshots that we took a few weeks ago where they had their rankings of the top 6 wide receivers. We'll just kind of go down. We'll talk about each of them. And as we do, we'll give our respect, obviously, the work that we've done with the film, and we've watched an absurd number of games, trying to be able to form an opinion with these players. Zach, I guess to give a little bit more color and a little bit more structure to what we're doing, just walk our listeners through kind of what your process looks like and what we're looking for with these wide receivers in terms of how we're leveraging the film.
So it's a little bit different than running backs, although within running backs you have, I think, kind of 3 different types of backs, where you've got the do-it-all back, the McCaffrey who can carry it and catch. You've got the grinders who are like the Jordan Howard type, and you've got the pass catchers. I think with wide receiver, there's a lot more variability in types of players within that overall umbrella of receiver. And it's something that I've been kind of toying with for a few years now, where, because I go and watch for, I have 11 specific traits that I'm looking for. So I'm looking for hands, I'm looking for route and break, which that to me is like the top of your stem and that sort of thing. I'm looking and against zone, and I'm looking for separation, which again is how much space you create, whether you're creating it, with quickness and horizontally, or whether you're a player who can go high point and create separation vertically. I'm looking for fight, high point ability. I'm looking for a guy to be able to play in traffic. I'm looking for post catch ability, release off the line of scrimmage, especially against press. I'm looking for an ability to block. I'm looking for them to be able to make adjustments to poorly thrown balls or back shoulder throws, that sort of thing. And I'm also looking for their ability to play on the sideline. But within each wide receiver, I think that there are types. So we're going to talk about Jamar Chase, I assume, up off the bat, because he's everybody's darling this year. He is a player that I would consider more of a prototypical X receiver. So I'm more concerned with his release off the line of scrimmage, especially against press. I'm concerned with his ability to go down the field and make plays in the high point. I'm also concerned with his ability to create separation, both in the intermediate game and deep. Whereas some of these other players who are primarily slot receivers who drive volume, I'm more looking at their separation. I'm looking at their break, at the stem of their route and that sort of thing, and being able to play in traffic over the middle. So, even though, yes, we're using the same 11 criteria for each receiver, I think that within the umbrella of receiver as a position, there are probably 4 or 5 different types of receivers, and maybe even more than that. I mean, I know there was a question posed to me on Twitter this week about the difference between KJ Hamler last year and Elijah Moore this year. And I said they're slot receivers, but there are different types of slot receivers. And Hamler to me was a field stretcher, a speed slot, not a guy who drives a ton of volume, but a guy who can get vertical and make plays down the field and be valuable to your team that way. Whereas Elijah Moore is more of a drive volume slot receiver, make plays after the catch and that sort of thing. And even though they're both slot, they're different players. And so that's a little bit of kind of the nuts and bolts behind what I'm looking for. And kind of my new understanding of the position, because it's always evolving and the NFL is changing faster than we can keep up. So I'm running behind trying to chase it down, you know.
Constant state of chase. Speaking of the perpetual wide receiver one of this class since all the way back last year, one Jamar Chase, junior wide receiver out of LSU. He opted out this last season, and Zack, I had to do a quick bit of research here when it comes to a tweet that I sent. Again, we're referencing receipts here. I sent a tweet last year, September 7th, 2019, and I forgot who he was playing, but I remember watching Jamar Chase make all these plays early in LSU season. And I said, Jamar Chase, he's kind of a baller. Be nice. Like, I need the 411. Someone help me. So I had back several guys, AGQ. We've got Jesse, we've got Kyle, and we've from Debbie Watch, the guys from Debbie Watch. And I said, hey, LSU finally has a QB to unlock the wide receiver talent, because we've seen these talents come through LSU and not necessarily having the quarterback play to match, which kind of reverted back to this year, which was probably nice for Chase because the quarterback play wasn't there, and neither was he. In a record-setting year as a sophomore, which is just absurd, he had in 14 games last season, he had 84 catches, which you're kind of like, okay, that's pretty. I mean, that's good. 1,780 yards. He averaged 21.2 yards per catch, 20 touchdowns. If you don't understand how absurd that is, he was number 2 in receptions in the conference behind Justin Jefferson. He was number 1 in receiving yards in the SEC, as well as in the nation. He was number 3 from yards from scrimmage in the SEC. And again, the 20 touchdowns, if you're wondering where that ranks, again, oh yeah, number 1 in the SEC, which is absolutely absurd. The guy was absolutely on fire last season. Consensus All-American, Biletnikoff Award winner. Listen, the accolades and the goodness for Jamar Chase go on and on. Zack, walk us through who many believe is a generational talent in this class.
Yeah, and look, everything you just mentioned, if the best gamblers are the guys who quit while they're ahead, Jamar Chase ranks right up there with Amarillo Slim, man. Like you said, on the heels of that undefeated season, they won a national championship. He hauled in 9 catches for 221 yards and 2 touchdowns in the national championship game, won the Biletnikoff college football's best receiver, and then opts out. It's a perfectly timed bet on himself. Jamar Chase, to me, is the best downfield threat in the 2021 class. He'll beat press coverage off the line with a hesitation, a jab step, or straight hand fighting. That's 3 different release moves, which you love to see from a guy who's a potential X receiver. And look, his release isn't as consistently dominant as you would like, but he does have all 3 of those moves that he uses. And once en route, Chase uses a combination of strength and speed to outduel defenders. He's got tremendous ball tracking skills, which allow him to outmaneuver players while the ball is in flight. And Chase is also really aware of what is happening behind him, which is not something you necessarily think of with an X receiver, but he'll often break off routes and work back to a quarterback when the quarterback is under duress, which is something, to me, it shows his intelligence as a football player and as a receiver, being able to do that, make those adjustments.
Chase is someone that you would think measures much bigger than he actually is. Current listing I'm showing for him, and again, this will be interesting when we get to LSU's Pro Day, 6'1", 205. And again, he was doing all of this work that we're speaking about as a 19-year-old sophomore. Just absolutely dynamite season. Some of the things that I really like about Chase that I know that he gets a ton of credit. It's hard to say, oh, he doesn't get enough credit for this. Like everybody's talking about Chase as being that guy, but some things I do want to highlight alongside with you is Zach. His ability to stack consistently. He is as good, if not, he's as good as anyone in this class with his ability to get even with cornerbacks and really put them in positions to be uncomfortable and consistently chase, no pun intended, chase. Because when he's able to eat cushion, he's able to lull people to sleep, and his body control, the ability that he has to adjust to poorly thrown passes or underthrown balls, moment of truth balls he's winning consistently. He is an all-around really good player in so many different facets, and we could go on a while, and I think both of us like him, but obviously he's not the perfect prospect. And I know that I can speak for Zach when I say this, but Justin Jefferson, we still maintain Justin Jefferson was a better prospect from what we saw on the film in 2019 than Jamar Chase was now. That's one of the things we just talked about, the biases that we had to fight against coming into this year. That's one of the biases that I had to really put myself in check every time I turned on film for Chase, because I didn't want to sit here and compare him to who Jefferson was and what we saw of him because we thought so highly of him. I had to look at him for him, and he's an absolutely fantastic player. So, Zach, take us through some of the things that you may not be so thrilled about Chase's game currently.
Yeah, so as great a weapon as Chase is, I think he does lack quickness in his breaks to be really, truly effective in shorter spaces. So when we talk about, NFL teams now shifting sometimes their alpha, their X receiver inside, I'm not sure that Chase is that guy all the time. And he also has struggles sometimes where he'll go through stretches where he doesn't separate from a defender who gets a good jam on him at the line of scrimmage. Now, it doesn't always happen because Chase does have some pretty good release moves, but when it does, it's that issue with consistency, not with his technique or ability. It's just the he doesn't do it every time to get a clean release. When he gets jammed, I think that he struggles a little bit.
Yeah, and that short area quickness, or in Chase's case, kind of lack thereof, can prove to be, I think, problematic in moments, because, like you said, there are moments where we see just about everything from him. He's beating press, he's stacking, he's showing those late hands with the ball, plucking the ball, all those good things. But there are also instances where a lot of these quicker corners, while he is able to outmuscle them and he's strong with run after the catch, he's not necessarily dynamic in that sense, at least not in my estimation. So Chase is a very, very good player. That short area quickness is something that I'm like getting open early. I don't necessarily see it from him often. However, golly, you're going to be pretty thrilled, I'd imagine, if you're landing Jamar Chase on your teams come May when these rookie drafts are here. Anything you can do, I can do better. Somehow, some way, that just started playing in the background here as we talk about DLF's number 2 ranked wide receiver, and that takes us to one Devonta Smith, again out of Alabama, the SEC holding strong here, holding court, if you will. Devonta Smith. You may guess.
Hold on,
he's
I
a
lost
senior.
you.
Yes, he is. Yes, it is the case where.
I lost you.
Oh, that's a bummer. You there?
I am here occasionally.
Oh man.
No, you're there now. We're good.
Okay.
It was
running back.
Devonta Smith. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, cool. No, that's okay. I don't know what's going on over here. I'll try it again. Let's see. Next up, we've got wide receiver out of Alabama, one Devonta Smith. And all of a sudden in the background, all I can hear is anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you. So we've got the senior wide receiver out of Alabama, again, coming out of the SEC. And you talk about Chase's accolades in 2019. Devonta Smith went on an absolute roll in 2020. We've got 117 catches, 1,856 yards, and that's 23 touchdowns. Statistically, just shining all over the place. And you talk about awards, you talk about AP Player of the Year, check. Consensus All-American, check. Biletnikoff, check. Maxwell Award, check. SEC Offensive Player of the Year, Walter Camp Player of the Year. Oh, yeah. And he's the Heisman Award winner. National championship in tow. Absolutely absurd way to close out a collegiate career. Zach, walk us through your notes on one Devonta Smith.
Yeah, every year there's a player who becomes that evaluation battleground between film and analytics. And this year, Devonta Smith is a no-holds-barred steel cage match, pitting breakout age, BMI, and college dominator against the infamous eye test. Somebody book Michael Buffer. Devonta Smith is primarily a slot receiver, I think, attacking defenses from the inside out, but don't let that fool you into thinking that he's limited to playing close to the line of scrimmage. Smith uses a lightning-quick jab step to create space against press, and once he's got a step on a defender, Smith is long gone. He's got very good hands catching the ball away from his body, and this is the thing that I really love. And you and I had talked about Devonta Smith even before he had his big 3-touchdown like breakout game on national television. And I said, Smith is a threat to score anytime on a slant route. He doesn't profile like Odell Beckham, but that slant route and the ability to house one at any time, that is OBJ to a T. And even though he is undersized, and he's going to be undersized, I mean, there's no way around it. He's going to be small. I've got him listed at 6'1", 175. I think that's probably in like a 15-pound weight vest. Like he's going to be tiny, but he is tenacious. And even Smith will block. And he's willing to set the edge for a running back to get extra yards, which as a guy that small, I didn't expect it. And there was actually a play I've got a note in 2019 against Michigan at 3:20 left in the second quarter. He got absolutely lit up blocking. The next play, he put that same cornerback on his rear end and ended up Najee Harris ended up with like a 15-yard gain. And I was like, that is what I want. I love that little dog in him. It's great.
That's it right there. That last slide. He's got some dog in him, some fight, some can do. I'm a fan. You talk about varied releases off of the line of scrimmage, different release patterns to be able to make sure that he's freeing himself from any press that he may be seeing. We see him line up on the outside and win. We see him line up in the slot and win. We see him line up against man coverage and win with precise footwork. We see him line up and be able to find holes in zone, whether he's settling or whether he's crossing through on various deep overs or drags. Moment of truth, ball winner. Listen, I could go on and on about Devonta Smith, and it's really cool to be able to see him separate at all levels. A lot of people it will say that a lot of what he's done in his senior season may not matter because he's a senior going up against perhaps younger players. And a lot of folks may also feel that obviously with his frame, that is a problem as well, functional play strength. And people will even say that his ability to thrive was mostly based on Steve Sarkisian, who was the offensive coordinator at Alabama, just being on absolute fire all season long. Zach, what do you say about some of the drawbacks of Devonta Smith's game?
I mean, obviously, the glaring hole for Smith is his size. Like, that's whenever he fails, it's because he was beaten physically, whether he was unable to separate through contact, whether he got blown up by a larger defender while blocking, or he not being the apex predator at the high point of a catch. Things aren't going to get easier for Smith at the next level. He's going to have to be smart. He's going to have to pick his battles. But I do think that being an undersized player in a league of athletic Goliaths, he's already done that. He's already been an undersized player in the SEC, which sends more guys to the NFL than any other conference, in college. So he can do that. Smith's ability to create separation during his routes and his knack for rolling up yards after the catch, it really is set right in that mold of new wave wide receiver production. So I know he's got flaws. I know that he's small, but I really like Devonta Smith. He's in that top tier of wide receiver for me.
No question. He left Stingley, the quarterback from LSU, gave him nightmares over these last 2 seasons. Just a guy that many people deem as one of, if not the top cornerback in the nation, prospect wise. He's finally going to be draft eligible come this season. But he really had his way with him over the course of the last couple seasons. So Devonta Smith, super talented player. Moving on to number 3 on the list here. We don't necessarily have to travel incredibly far when looking at this list. And by incredibly far, I do mean right across to the other side of the exact same line of scrimmage. We've got one Jalen Waddle, again, wide receiver, Alabama. We're looking at him coming out here as a junior, and not quite the production of Devonta Smith. And we even saw that his season be cut short this year because of injury. We saw him kind of gut it out, come back, be a functional player for their chase for the national championship. But I feel like there are a lot of questions that abound with Jalen Waddle. But one thing that there is not a question about is the man can ball, and he is fast. Talk to us about Jalen Waddle.
Speed on its own, I think, is overvalued in the NFL. But when you combine it with quickness, it becomes the foundation that a receiver can build on. And Jalen Waddle has both in droves. Waddle raced, I don't know if you saw this, but raced teammate Henry Ruggs to a dead heat before the 2019 season. And Ruggs went on to post a 4.27 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine. So, Waddle's got some wheels. And it's not just straight line speed that makes Jalen Waddle a tantalizing prospect. It's how he uses it. Waddle's exceptional at changes speeds during a route. He can drive a defender to try and keep pace, but also have that change in acceleration and be able to, burst past and use those wheels. His lateral quickness is mind-bending. Waddle is capable of changing directions while maintaining top speed. And I think he's also very versatile to be able to line up, split outside, win with speed, slide inside in the slot, and win with quickness. And he's almost this like queen chess piece for an offensive coordinator, where Waddle has a knack of being able to work from the inside out to the sideline. Where, and I talked a little bit about this last night on the Dynasty Trades HQ podcast, but being able to have a player who can do that means you can run those little rub routes that the Patriots love to do, where the X receiver or the Z receiver is maybe like by accident in a running lane of a defender, and create space that way. Waddle can work from the inside out, and that really wreaks some havoc on defenses.
And with Jalen Waddle, we watched, he was another one of these players in this class, similar to Travis Etienne, similar to Trevor Lawrence, where we've gotten exposure to him over the last 3 years. And we've kind of been able to watch his role grow in this offense from a freshman who's basically catching bubble screens and returning punts to now this last season in the sample size that we had be someone who was winning everywhere. Double moves, screens, his ability to, again, open up end zone. I really love his ability as he's navigating through a zone, crossing over. Also, the ball's not hitting the ground a ton when they're throwing it to him. I think in the games that I charted, there was like maybe 3 drops and 2 of them came in one game. The guy flat out gets it done. And I think one of the things that I'm most excited about when it comes to Jalen Waddle is that while speed is one of his elite traits, it's the fact that something that you can't measure mentally, I think that he really gets in the head of the defense. I think that his ability to eat cushion, be one of those space eaters, and really make cornerbacks and defenders uncomfortable in space, that there are countless times where you're just watching people hoping and praying that his first move is the only move. Because when he breaks off, he's a guy who can cut on a dime. And when he's breaking off these routes, specifically on double moves, I mean, he's making play. Listen, very excited about Waddle. Listed at 5'10", 175 pounds, not the biggest guy, not the largest player that we're going to be discussing, but one of his drawbacks, obviously, may be his size. So, Zach, take us through some of the things that you've seen with Jalen Waddle's tape that maybe give you a little bit of pause.
Yeah, Waddle's undersized, and it's going to cause some problems when he gets into traffic in the middle of the field. And Waddle, you mentioned the couple drops in one game. Waddle does have concentration lapses, and they manifest into clusters of drops. So it's not just when he drops a ball, which is not very often, he's liable to drop 2 or 3 in that same kind of space. But the biggest concern to me on Waddle's profile has nothing to do with his play on the field. It's the fact that he suffered a broken ankle in October against Tennessee, effectively ending his junior season. And although he did come back for 3 catches in the national championship game, Waddle's gait was not the same. And you were in that the DFPN chat. I was absolutely irate that Waddle was in that game, that they even let him suit up. I mean, you saw him testing his ankle before that national championship game, and it was a bad limp. Nothing good can come of that. And I was just, it really, really bothered me that he didn't have people around him looking out for him to say, look, you've got an NFL career on the line here. Let's not get injured any further in a national championship game that in the grand scheme of things doesn't really hold any water. So to me, if he can get healthy and if Waddle can regain his trademark speed, then he should be an interesting piece for an NFL offense. But he's going to end up being a player, I think, for fantasy that is going to be able to rack up huge points and a few touches, but is going to remind me more of like Hollywood Brown and Henry Ruggs than he is of somebody like Justin Jefferson or Devonta Smith.
Yeah, and I think that this is where you and I diverge in terms of how we look at Waddle, because and I'll say this real quick in terms of things that I'm not thrilled about with him. In the open field, he's an absolute problem for defenses. My issue is in tight quarters, his hesitancy to make a decision. He's very indecisive sometimes when the defense is kind of bearing on him, short spaces like on screen, things of that nature. I really want him to be able to just make your decision and go, because you're going to be getting positive yardage. You're going to be making positive plays. The thing, and I guess where we differ, Zach, is that while I think Ruggs and some others were pieces, and we saw this early on with Waddle at Alabama, were pieces where he would open up the offense for other people to really eat. I also found that Waddle's doing all these things to consistently become open as he matured over the years. And by the time we got to this season and even the end of 2019, he became someone that I felt like was very nuanced with his routes. The separation that he's able to generate at all levels is also something to behold. And a guy who's able to stop on a dime. His ability to work back to the ball in some instances, or work back to the quarterback, be a reliable weapon in that fashion. I think that he is what people were hoping Ruggs was, what people were hoping that Hollywood was, and I think that he's got more functional strength, play strength, and even just a more varied route tree than those guys would have ever hoped to have at the college level. So I think that's where we differ on good old Waddle.
Yeah, I like that. I really struggle to see him driving a big volume of targets to him, and even like I know he only played 6 games this year, but he only caught about 4.5 balls a game, which is fine. Like that's not bad, but that's not going to feed the Bulldog if you're looking for a fantasy asset. Like I think he's going to be potentially a great player for an NFL team. He may end up being a guy you can plug into your fantasy lineup, but it's not the type of player that I generally go after because I don't see him, as currently constituted as a player who's going to drive that volume that I like to see. Fair enough. There's our don't back down from me. You can put up your dukes. Let's go.
I don't. Listen, I could spoil and tell you where I have him, and I know that it's probably going to be very different from you, but I want to at least save a little bit of intrigue when we get to the reveal here shortly. But we'll move on here. Wide receiver 4 on the evening. We are looking at one Rondell Moore out of Purdue. Yes, he's missed time. Yes, he's had hamstrings that lesser men would have likely lost legs from with the injuries that he's had. But we've seen and saw a freshman year for the ages back in 2018 with Rondell Moore. 114 receptions, 1,258 yards, and 12 touchdowns. Not to mention 213 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns to boot. Yes, Rondell Moore gets busy. Yes, if you're in a phone booth, you're not touching him. Rondell Moore is an absolutely exciting player for us to be able to take a look at what he did a couple years ago. And again, he's only played 7 games over the last couple years. But Zack, take us through Rondell Moore and what you saw of him on the field.
The mosquito is the deadliest animal on the planet. Not sharks, not king cobras, not crocodiles, mosquitoes. Look, sure, they're small, but they're nimble, driven, and perfectly designed for their purpose. Rondell Moore is a mosquito. If you underestimate him, it's going to come back to bite you. Moore's just 5'9", and he works almost exclusively out of the slot. And in the past, I think that alone would have been enough to sink his profile for most people. But the new era of NFL passing attacks, Moore will be a weapon. He is quick off the line of scrimmage and out of his breaks. And when Moore has the ball in his hands, he seems to be stuck in fast forward. He's got very good hands. He catches the ball away from his body. That enables Moore to be able to absorb contact in traffic while maintaining possession. And in spite of his diminutive size, Moore can squat over 600 pounds. That combination of strength, burst, speed, agility, and quickness is going to make Moore a nightmare to defend. And I think he'll be an asset as a receiver, a runner, and a returner. And I don't think that he's a player that you have to scheme for. I think he's a player you can scheme for and do some really dangerous things.
The quickness, and I know that you've mentioned this many times with Rondell Moore, the quickness may be unmatched in the class. His ability to set up blocks, to be decisive after the catch, specifically in tight spaces. I think a lot of what he does in tighter spaces, I like more than what Waddle does. And his ability to even be strong after the catch plays with this play strength that's much bigger than his listed size. And a lot of people will look at the size, him being a smaller player, and maybe even knock him for that a little bit, or they'll knock him for the fact that he's missed so many games over the last couple of seasons. Rondell Moore, not a perfect prospect by any means. Zack, take us through what you feel like are the drawbacks with Rondell Moore.
Yeah, so all this dynamism that Moore has, I think sometimes can be a fault, where he has a tendency to try to run before he's caught the ball, and he'll sacrifice a sure reception for the promise of that splash play, and he gets in trouble with that. Moore also struggles to make plays on the sideline. And sometimes it's lacking awareness of exactly where the boundaries are. But the other part is his height makes it necessary to be flawless when taking angles toward the sideline. And because of this, Moore is rarely deployed split out wide. You really have to, in order to get him the ball on the boundaries, have to move your quarterback out of the pocket to get a throwing angle. But all that said, the name of the game in fantasy football is points per reception now. And no matter where Rondell Moore lands, he should be drawing plenty of targets. This, to me, is one time you should be listening to the buzz.
Speaking of buzz, I feel like what we constantly saw on film and the way that Purdue would leverage him was essentially get him out in space and throw it to him immediately, and defenders are constantly buzzing from sideline to sideline trying to get to him. I think he was woefully underutilized at Purdue because some people say that he was very, very gadgety, kind of gimmick driven in terms of his touches. However, we see with his ability to open up in small spaces, he's absolutely outstanding. My main drawback with Rondell Moore is I get really frustrated with the drops from him. I think in some instances their concentration, because other times we see him pluck the ball and be able to catch outside of his frame and do all sorts of positive things. But there are so many more drops than I care to see from a player that, again, can do so many good things with ball in hand. I can't have you putting the ball on the ground, not being someone that your quarterback is going to be able to trust. So Rondell Moore, dynamite athlete, dynamite player. And I think that one that we're both excited about for this class. Coming up, number 5 for the evening, the shining star of Minnesota, Rashad Bateman, listed at 6'2", 200 pounds. We watched him play a really awesome role as the number 2 next to Tyler Johnson in 2019, only to come in 2018, only to come on in 2019 and be fantastic and have a fantastic season again alongside Tyler Johnson. Then he opted out. Then it was like, wait, I'm going to opt back in for 2020. I think I'm going to actually play. And then we saw him not necessarily set the world on fire, and the Minnesota team that was really struggling throughout the year. But his best season, 2019, when we got the last full look at when we got the last full look at Rashad Bateman, 60 receptions, 1,219 yards, and 11 touchdowns. That's good for 20 yards a reception. I mean, that's serious production. Rashad Bateman, a lot of folks are excited about him. The analytics crowd fawns over one Bateman. Zack, take us through how you're seeing Rashad Bateman's strengths.
I'm going to give you a little art appreciation class, like art appreciation 101 to begin with Bateman. At first glance, the Mona Lisa is a smirking woman in a drab dress seated in front of a winding smudge of a road. And if you're not looking carefully, you probably will miss the subtle genius of Da Vinci. Rashad Bateman's film has a really similar quality. You can watch him have 16 catches, 177 yards in a game and still come away underwhelmed a little bit. But upon closer inspection, Bateman does so many little things well. He's a chameleon. He's able to win from the slot with technique and quickness, and Bateman's able to win from the outside with his ability to haul in deep throws and toe tap on the sideline. His footwork, specifically his jab step release, has drastically improved year to year. And Bateman, I think, attacks zones very well, which is a trait that's become increasingly important with the shifting NFL toward more and more receivers moving inside to gain matchup advantages. And this is something that I have been looking for more and more, that ability to play against zone. Man, Bateman can do that. And I also think Rashad Bateman pays attention to the most minute details, even releasing hard off the line on plays that are runs away from him just to decoy the safety and corner, to take them out of a play. And I know it doesn't sound like a big deal, but a guy that pays attention to that sort of thing, is paying attention to all of the little things that go into making a great player. It's like having a left fielder who's backing up third base on a ball that's hit to right. I mean, it's that same attention to detail. I really love that with Bateman.
Over and over again, you're watching some really clean footwork from Bateman. You're watching someone who is strategic with setting up defenders, and he's one of the best in class when it comes to manipulating defenders without being, I think, a world-class athlete. He's just someone that is very precise and very deliberate with how he's coming off of the line, like you were talking in reference to the drag step and the various releases that he has. I feel like there's always purpose in every step from him, except his very first step. Right? Mm-hmm. He's a false stepper, consistently rocking back on that false step. So that's me nitpicking when it comes to Rashad Bateman. But talk me through, Zach, some of the things that you're seeing in his game that you are just a little bit cautious regarding his prospects.
So I don't think Bateman ever feels fast. And sometimes his routes take a long time to develop, and sometimes too long, which gets your quarterback in trouble because he's in the pocket trying to wait for Bateman to, make his route and come open. And the other thing is, early in his career, he really struggled when he got jammed at the line of scrimmage. He cleaned that up later. But you only had, I had 5 games this year, so it's a smaller sample size. I don't want to go too much, but I do like the fact that he did clean up a little bit of that release at the line of scrimmage. I think ultimately highlights sell tickets, but players who consistently make plays that they are supposed to make win games. And Rashad Bateman's ability to do virtually anything in a receiving core is going to make him a valuable asset to a team, and his efficiency is going to be a valuable asset to your fantasy team. I think the real question now becomes Rashad Bateman's draft capital, because coming out of Minnesota, coming out of that conference, it's going to be tough. And whether or not a coach has the foresight to understand that you can use Bateman anywhere. You can use him in multiple different positions. You can move him around the formation, and he will be successful.
And let me ask this, Zach, because I'm with you in that he doesn't really ever feel fast. He can look quick at moments, and he's got this ability to be able to break plays consistently. Consistent playmaker, which I think is even more special with the fact that we don't necessarily think that his speed is really that kind of asset for him. Let me ask you this: when you look at the upside of Rashad Bateman, do you feel like, or do you, and this is not to put you in a corner, I'm just curious how you view, does he give you the vibes of someone that you can consistently go to at the next level to have an offense built around?
So to me, he feels a little bit like the wide receiver 1 as a 2. So in that vein of like a Calvin Ridley or Tyler Boyd, where you weren't immensely excited when they came out, but they were nice players. I think Bateman is kind of similar. And you talk about how he's a playmaker and he'll break big plays. And a lot of that is just due to him paying attention and being very, very intelligent about, where he's making his breaks and his spacing with the defenders and all of that. It's attention to those little details, but he never feels like a traditional 1. He never feels like the guy that you're going to be afraid of, but he's going to be the guy who you're not afraid of, and he will beat you.
Did I lose you? Did I lose you? Whoop. Oh, no. I think I can hear you, though.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Whew. Sorry about that. The audio started clipping like the last half of Rondell Moore, and then all through Bateman, my audio was clipping in my ear. And I was like, I don't know if that's my headphones or if that's my computer. I don't know what's going on in my system right now. But I hear you fine now. So so it was probably an issue with my headphones. So I apologize.
No, you need to apologize. I just you were looking like things were, we had a bad scene. I was like, oh no.
It was like click, 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 click. Like you were talking, it was like tut, 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 tut. And I was like, what is going on with my system right now? Anywho, we're on the last player, so we made it this far without my system totally bugging out on me.
We're all the way to the terrace. We're in the upper deck.
Send me to the terrace. All right, cool. Rashad Bateman, I feel like is really looking forward to see how the NFL views him, because draft capital is going to be fun to try to track. Seeing excited the NFL and
you're chopping again.
Losing. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. You just chopped.
I don't know what's going on, man. My computer's just. I don't know. All right, I'll try that again. Are you getting me now?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Rashad Bateman is someone that I feel like we're going to learn so much more about over the next days, weeks, months, regarding his athleticism at his pro day, regarding what we're looking at come the actual draft capital that he receives, and how NFL teams really view his prospects and where he ends up going. I think it's going to be a fascinating experiment for us to be able to actually view as we move forward. The last wide receiver on the evening, we come to the third musketeer, if you will, when it comes to the passing game out of LSU. It took him a while to be the one that we actually came to see and be excited for. Terrace Marshall Jr., 6'3", 200 pounds, out of LSU, and somewhat living in the shadow and in obscurity, if you will, for someone who was the wide receiver 3 of the national championship LSU Tigers back in 2019. His best season was actually this last season, where he didn't even really finish the season. He ended up opting out toward the latter part of the SEC schedule that he was playing in. So we're able to see his best be his last. So 48 receptions, 731 yards, and 10 touchdowns. A guy that flashes some fantastic speed, flashes some really good ball skills. But again, took him a while to come out and really show what he could be in an offense that was rather pedestrian in 2020. Zack, Terrace Marshall getting some late first round mock draft vibes from him all over the place. What are your thoughts on who he is as a player?
Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, Russell Gage, DJ Chark, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Terrace Marshall. There's been a pretty impressive run of LSU wide receivers drafted to the NFL in recent years. It's impossible not to wonder whether Marshall keeps this trend up. And for his part, look, Terrace Marshall was impressive in his junior campaign. He hauled in more touchdowns, 10, than games played, 7. Marshall uses his size and speed to get open often over the top of defenses. And when he gets a free release at the line of scrimmage, Marshall gets up to speed very quickly and will beat defenders with double moves also to create enough of a window to be targeted. Marshall's got very strong hands at the catch point, usually collects the ball softly away from his body. He also does a good job attacking zones, which wasn't something that I expected to see from Terrace Marshall, but he did a good job against zones, especially on slants, where Marshall can take that tack, and add bonus yardage after the catch. So there's some things that I like about his profile. I've been bandied around as a known Terrace Marshall hater, but there's some things that I like.
And even in the midst of a so-so season, he still gave us plenty of highlights and plenty of things that could really get you excited about his prospects and maybe even his growth as a player. His hands, size, speed, just some things that you're like, wow, this kid can really run, can really create separation over the top. And I love to be able to watch him track the ball, because even when there was a particular play, I believe it was against Texas A&M, where the quarterback throws an absolute duck of a ball and he just kind of tracks it, and the ball kind of takes this funny trajectory as it comes into his hands, and he just plucks it. And it was really cool to be able to watch him do that throughout the season. Obviously, there's likely a reason why he was third banana, and not just because Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson were really good. But so take us through some of the things that may be holding you back from being more effusive of praise for one Terrace Marshall.
Well, the first thing has nothing or not very much to do with Terrace Marshall, but let me give you a couple of games here. 8 catches for 111 yards, 5 catches for 108 yards and a touchdown, 14 catches for 308 yards and 3 touchdowns. You know what that is? That is Kayshon Boutte in the 3 games after Terrace Marshall opted out. So, yeah, Terrace Marshall had this fantastic season for LSU, but Kayshon Boutte, who is a freshman, came in and outproduced him in some tough games. I mean, he did that against Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi. So it's not like he's running the table on slouches there. And as far as Marshall, although he moved primarily to an outside role in 2020, I still saw him struggle when he's pressed. His go-to move to avoid being jammed is a jab step, but it often turns into unneeded steps at the line of scrimmage instead. And Marshall, I think, also has a tendency to get nonchalant sometimes at the stem of his route, slowing down at the cut point and allowing defenders to recover makes it a lot tougher to make a catch, and it also makes it a lot tougher for a quarterback to find a window to throw to him. And the other thing, and the strangest part probably of Marshall's game, especially because he's 6'3", 200 pounds, is his inability to block. And this might be a little bit of a hyperbole, but it seems as though every time he's assigned to block a corner, that guy makes the tackle. Every single play. So, look, Marshall is big. He's fast. He's from LSU. Those are all going to be points of interest for the NFL. For fantasy purposes, he feels a little bit like a paper tiger to me. But if you're going to get him in the second round, that size speed upside may be just fine.
Yeah, and I think that's what's going to be one of the more interesting points of contention come draft season is if the NFL is going to give Terrace Marshall first round capital, if he's going to be the guy that goes in the first round, I'm really curious to see what that does for how he's viewed within the community. While I love his hands and while I'm a big fan of his speed and his ability to track the ball, like those are all really good things. It's earlier in the route that gives me the pause. It's like you were detailing. It's all these steps when you're trying to beat press. It's being that tall and that big, but not being able to really shed corners early on. It's the lack of short area quickness. It's that defenders are all over you in places when I feel like you should be winning the ball. And I think the thing that really bothered me most with Terrace Marshall is that when you finally got the time to shine, you did get a ton of targets. I wanted to be able to see him do the things that we saw Kayshon Boutte do and really put on a clinic time after time and just really show, hey, like I've been waiting my turn and here I am, like hear me roar. He had really good games. He had nice stat lines. That wasn't necessarily the issue. It's that when push comes to shove, making plays in big moments, we didn't see that. And I remember specifically the game against Missouri here in 2020 when it all came down to fourth down for him and third and goal, they went to him and he didn't get open. On fourth and goal, they line him up on the right-hand side. He's got to beat this one corner and he kind of comes up, give this really lazy move at the goal line. He pushes off. And still, while the ball wasn't perfect, still wasn't able to come up with the catch. And I felt like that was just a microcosm of all the things that would disappoint me in terms of wanting to be more excited, because I really wanted to be excited about Terrace Marshall. But all those things early in the route, not being able to separate horizontally, it just really bothered me to some degree. But lots of upside to be had there. We'll see how he can continue to develop and what the league sees of him.
Well, and I think that he's going to be one of those players, like we talked about way back at the very beginning of the show, that some people wanted him to be that alpha dominant next LSU receiver and tried to fit him into that, and give him a pass because, yeah, Justin Jefferson was there. Yeah, Jamar Chase was there, but he's not in that same ilk with them. I don't see it.
That's wide receiver part one, Zach. We've made it through. And as always, we cannot end the show without seeing at least how you have this group stacked together. Again, for everyone, if you may be new or checking us out for the first time, we appreciate it. But please remember that these are our film grades. These are basically how we have them stacked up with each other currently regarding how we saw them on film, not necessarily their overall rank on our wide receiver board. So that said, Zach, the floor is yours. Film grades galore.
Rondell Moore is my one overall wide receiver, but there is a top tier, and that top tier is Rondell Moore, Jamar Chase at 2, and Devonta Smith at 3. And I think that if you get any of those 3 wide receivers right now, I'm going to be really happy about it. At 4, I've got Rashad Bateman. We gotta scroll down a little bit to find Jalen Waddle. He'd be my next guy in this group, but I've got him at 7 overall. And I'm looking at my top 12, and I don't see Terrace Marshall anywhere, but he's going to bring up the rear of these 6.
Hello. Are you there? That's good stuff there. So Rondell Moore, number 1 with the bullet for Zack there. That I love to see it. And again, that short area quickness is absolutely spooky. The way that I have them lined up right now, I've got Devonta Smith as my number 1. And Zach and I haven't talked about this prior to now. So I'm excited to see his face as we go through this. I've got Devonta Smith as my number 1 in this group. I've got Jalen Waddle as my number 2. Yes. I'm excited. I'm really excited for Jalen Waddle. I went in trying to clear my head and really, because I wasn't really super thrilled. I was a big fan of Judy coming up and watching him go and grow as a player over time. And I went in thinking that I'm really not going to be all that excited about Waddle, but I tried to flesh that out of my mind. And the more that I watched, specifically over the years, being able to see his growth, I think the sky is the limit for Waddle. He can be really scary. Wide receiver 3, people are going to be really upset at this point. Rondell Moore. I've got Rondell at number 3. I've got Jamar Chase at number 4. And I think that they're all a tier for me. I think that's my top tier, those 4. From there, I've got one Rashad Bateman coming up as the number 5, and Terrace Marshall, whose grade shall not be named currently, is the number 6 of this group. I will not tell you how he stacks up against everyone at this time, but I'm excited to be able to continue this journey with you, Zach. How you feeling so far as we're through the first 6 wide receivers?
I like it. Avada Kedavra, Terrace Marshall. You just killing curse. You just toasted him. He who must not be named. He's banished from the show for good now.
Utter sadness. And of course, we'll look up in 10 years and he's a Hall of Fame candidate and all sorts of craziness happening. So I'm excited to be able to continue to do this with you, Zach. Thank you again for having me. Again, folks, if you're checking us out for the first time, or if you're checking us out for the 101st time, we appreciate you. You can find me on Twitter at JMikeCheck, at JMICCheck. And remember that all of the smoke that you have with our process, remember we just do this for fun, and we're trying to get better with it every day. But you can find us, and if you have any feedback, if you have any notes on what we've done or what we've said, man, we're open to hearing from you, and we certainly want to be able to chop it up with you and share perspectives, because we're all about growing this between the community. We're all about enjoying our time as we walk through this process. So bring it all to us. You can find us out there on Twitter.
I love the don't be a dick, but we like to have dissenting opinions, because I've never learned anything when the words are coming out of my mouth. It's other people who bring a different perspective, and that's where we grow. That's where we. Am I still there? Did we?
I'm getting bits and pieces of you. This is literally the first time that it's done it this week, what it was doing last week.
Phone one connect to my computer.
Yeah, all I hear is it just sounds kind of like a robot at the moment.
Okay.
I know. Oh, there you are. There's your actual voice.
The neighbors, I think, were hacking me. This says connection is unstable.
Yeah, that happens from time to time.
I don't know. All right. So I think you hit that absolutely right. If you have dissenting opinions, if you disagree with us, come talk to us on Twitter. I mean, use the Kyle mantra. Don't be a dick, but do come talk to us, because we appreciate and enjoy discourse, dissenting opinions. I mean, for me, I have never learned anything new when my mouth was running. So that to me is how you grow. You grow when people disagree with you. So hit us up on Twitter. J Mike said he's at JMikeCheck. I am at Tacit Assassin 13. If you missed the running back shows, those shows are the pinned tweet on the Dynasty Dummies handle, which is at Dynasty Dummies. And if you want to get a hold of the show, if there's anybody you want us to talk about, if we miss guys, we're going to do a catch-all show at the end of this. So let us know. Let us know if there are players who are outside of the top 12 at positions that you want us to go over, because we got a little bit of time to hit some extra film. But this has been a lot of fun, J. Mike. I really appreciate being able to come on, and chop things up with you. I feel like your process and mine are just different enough that we're gaining some perspective, and it's a lot of fun. So I appreciate you, man. Thank you for doing this. This is awesome.
Pleasure is all mine. I'm just happy to be able to give a bunch of my perspectives and what we're seeing, and hopefully help a lot of you all out who are listening, the rest of us common folk out here, to be able to wade through draft season and feel good about wherever we land come the actual rookie drafts that we have in the spring.
I love it. And look, I think that's going to do it for us. You can check us out at the DFPN at Work, the only at work in town. We got a whole bunch of great guys that are putting out some really fun content. So check that out. But I think that wraps it for this show. Appreciate you listening. This has been the Dynasty Dummies.